It's that time of year. It's the Chamber of Business News year-end spectacular. We've brought back our all-star panel. My name is Garrick Taylor, and we've got from Compass Strategies, Jessie Armendt. Hi, Jessie.
Hey, Garrick.
We've got from First Strategic, Big Shot, Bob Charles. And from Elevate Strategies, LL, Lorna Romero. Hello, Lorna.
Hello.
Well, the internet has tuned in for this second year as we look back at the year that was and the year ahead. We are very fortunate to have this all-star panel. So let's jump right in. We're going to call this segment 1 2020, the year that was. We won't do a lot of Corona panel until the next segment. So believe it or not, in January of 2020, the Senate took up charges, impeachment charges on the president. The Senate chose not to convict. However, Bob, let's go to you first. Will anybody remember that the president was impeached and acquitted, or is this now in the files of history, never to be remembered again?
Well, if you think back to it, do people remember that Bill Clinton was impeached? Most don't. I think Trump being Trump, things are different, and people will want to remember that and kind of hang their hat on it as some sort of something that they accomplished to push back against him. In the history books, though, it'll be a footnote. I don't think most people will remember it.
Jesse, will anybody remember that this president got impeached?
Anyone? Yeah, sure. There'll be some people talking about it, but in general, I think that there were so many other dark marks on his presidency that the impeachment will not be the first bad thing that comes to mind when we think about 2020 and the Donald Trump presidency.
Lorna, a headline or a footnote?
Definitely a footnote. I forgot that happened during this calendar year until you just reminded us of it. So I think my esteemed colleagues are 100% correct. It came and it went. People will remember other things, and impeachment's not going to be one of them.
All right. For those of you keeping score at home, last year, Jesse, you were asked, would Senator Sinema vote to convict? You said you weren't sure, but you hope so. Lorna, you said that she would not vote to convict. Bob, you also said she would not vote to convict. Jesse, you were closest. The answer is yes, she voted to convict on both charges. Anybody have any reaction to that?
Good for her.
All right.
Yeah. I don't think it'll hurt her the way that she did. That's why my answer last year was based on her political thinking. I think that her vote is not going to hurt her in the long run.
Lorna, no biggie?
No biggie. And now that I can actually recall what the pre-pandemic world was like, she was very thoughtful leading up to her approach. And so I think that's something that she can always hang her hat on. But yeah, not really going to impact Sinema's legacy whatsoever.
Do you guys know why the president was impeached? Do you remember the charges?
It's a trick question.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing. It's a footnote. We can't even say what the charges were. All right. Let's go into the election. If anyone other than Joe Biden had been nominated by Democrats, would that person have defeated the incumbent Trump? We asked this question because last year we asked who the Democratic nominee would be. Lorna, Bob, and Jesse all said Biden. Jesse, you weren't really enthusiastic about it, though. Joe Biden won. Well, we'll park that conversation for later. Joe Biden won the nomination. We'll say that. So could anybody else in the field have defeated the incumbent president?
Are you asking me first?
Yeah.
Yeah. I do think that there were probably other candidates that had the stars aligned properly, and those stars include the large amounts of fundraising that would needed to have come their way, that would have been serious challenges to Donald Trump in November. Probably wouldn't have been Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders. I think that it was wise of Democratic primary voters to steer in a more centrist vein. But I think that there were interesting less left-leaning candidates like Pete Buttigieg, like Cory Booker, who, you know, probably neither of them were ready. But was Donald Trump ready to be president? I mean, that's hardly something he could use against them. And while I am perfectly happy with the outcome of the Democratic primary and of course the general, I don't think that that was necessarily the only path forward for a Democratic victory.
Jesse, before we ask your fellow panelists, did you find yourself as a Democratic voter getting more enthusiastic about the Biden nomination as the year went on?
Well, sure. Certainly as the year went on and it became more and more clear that the outcome was likely to be one that the Democrats preferred. And I think that, I know that I'm skipping to another question, but I think that the choice of adding Kamala Harris to the ticket also did a lot to excite some of the voters who, no offense to old white men, but were interested in seeing someone other than an old white man on the ticket, and certainly made me more enthusiastic about it.
I resemble that remark. All right, Lorna, was it Biden or bust?
100% Biden or bust. The Democrats would not have had any chance of winning the presidential election had it not been Biden. And I mean, even Biden, that wasn't even a slam dunk, given everything that transpired this year, Trump's performance, his, tanking numbers. It wasn't a slam dunk for him either. So I don't think there was any other opportunity for them to be successful without Biden.
Bob, Biden or bust?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that 2020 was such a weird year. It was not the traditional presidential candidate campaigns that we would ever have seen. When you look back and you saw that Biden didn't have to do anything. He almost never came out and did anything publicly. It makes me wonder, had there been another candidate, not a Bernie Sanders, but somebody more like a Buttigieg, that maybe had they had the same scenario where they didn't have to do anything and just let Trump kind of fall all over himself, maybe somebody else could have won, but probably Biden was just so middle of the road that I think people got on board.
Bob, we'll start with you next. Good move, bad move, or does it matter to name Kamala Harris as his running mate?
Initially, I thought very questionable move with her background and the social justice causes being so high on everybody's mind. But now being where I sit, I think it's cool. Having her be nominated, it's a woman as a vice president and also a minority woman. It's cool. I don't think that it hurt.
Lorna?
I don't think it hurt or helped. I just think at that point when everyone was just so sick of the presidential campaign at that point, it's kind of like, I understand it probably jazzed some of those folks on the left. I don't think it really did anything for the more centrist moderates and the people he was trying to, attract throughout the campaign. So, I mean, it's a good historical reference, but I don't think it really moved the needle for him in terms of attracting new voters.
Jesse, help, hurt, no effect.
Oh, I think it helped. I mean, I don't think it was a large impact, and I think he would have been fine either way. But I think it energized voters, and by voters also sort of grassroots movements that were, they weren't energized the way that they were during the Barack Obama elections, right? So I think that enthusiasm, and it added something fresh and cool to a ticket that on both sides was neither.
All right. Let's spice things up. Lorna, who do you believe should be determined to have been the lawful winner of the presidential election, and who do you believe will be inaugurated on January 20, 2021?
I mean, that is a tough question, Garrett. You brought that up. I mean, it's the critical question of the day. Joe Biden won. Joe Biden will be inaugurated, period. We shouldn't even be talking about this stuff anymore. Let's all move on.
All right. Jesse, who won? Who will be nominated? I mean, who will be inaugurated? Forgive me.
Yeah. Joe Biden. Crazy question, but I appreciate the throwing it in for some fun, Garrett.
Bob?
Biden. Look, it's sad to see what some in my party are doing right now. I applaud some of the county supervisors. I applaud some folks in leadership that are doing what they're doing. But Biden won. Yes, there are in elections, there's fraud, but we've got to have demonstrable proof of changing and swinging elections in a situation where Maricopa County lost their recorder and bring in a Republican for the person that controls the election. Come on, guys, please, 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 you're hurting the party.
Will you all be making your next egg dish with Hickman's eggs?
I have some in the fridge right now.
Right. Shout out to the folks at Hickman's. Yeah, I got it.
And I don't get paid to say that. It's not an advertisement.
Not a hashtag ad. That's fine.
Just disclosure.
Jesse, what is your outlook as we head into the new year and new presidency? Are you hopeful? Are you optimistic? Are you worried? Are you skeptical? Where is your emotional barometer at right now?
Oh, I mean, totally hopeful and optimistic. It's hard to bottom out much harder than we did in 2020, isn't it? So I can't really say that I know what to expect in the coming year, either locally or nationally, but I mean, it's hard to avoid the feeling that it's got to get better.
Bob, new presidency. Where's the Bob Charles emotional mood ring?
How about I just don't care? That's where I'm at. I don't think the president, we get so spun up as a nation on who wins and loses, but where I sit and as doing this for more than a decade now, hardly ever does the president do something that impacts me on a daily basis. There's some things that I absolutely care about that do get impacted, but there's so much more locally and in our state that matters to me.
All right, Lorna, where's the outlook is in the new presidency? Are you up, you down, you're neutral?
I really don't think there's going to be that big of a difference. Maybe the biggest difference will be we won't have a president that's tweeting 24/7. And it would be nice for the news to cover other topics versus what the president tweeted that day. There's a lot of things happening in the world. But in terms of like, is all of a sudden Washington, D.C. going to function well? That's not going to happen. And are Republicans and Democrats all of a sudden going to have a kumbaya? That's not going to happen. So not really optimistic on that. I just think it's going to be less crazy antics in DC coming out of the White House. That's about it.
All right, there you have it. All right, let's close out segment 1 here. Mark Kelly defeated Martha McSally in a special election. All right, last year, Bob, you punted on the question, but you leaned Kelly. Jesse, you predicted Kelly. Lorna, you said Martha in a squeaker. Lorna, we'll start with you. Right? It was Kelly, not in a squeaker. It wasn't a blowout either. Hot take on the election. It went how you thought it was going to go, or you did think Martha was going to win?
Well, this just goes to show that nobody should place any bets based off of my predictions. So first and foremost, let's just put that out there. I think a year ago when I made that prediction, Martha was better positioned. And, during 2020 with the Trump impact, she decided to kind of ride those coattails. And it just goes to show that it didn't really help her attracting the voters that she lost in 2018. So a year ago, I was a little bit more optimistic in terms of the direction she would take with her campaign. She didn't necessarily go in the direction I personally would have liked, and the end result was Mark Kelly. But I think a year ago, she actually had a shot.
Yeah. Jesse, you called it last year. I guess this turned out the way you thought it was going to turn out.
Good.
There you have it. There you have it. What more can you say? She called it. All right, Bob, you were on the fence, but you were leaning Kelly. I guess it turned out, I guess your trick knee was right.
Yeah, I think there was so much in the state that has kind of been shifting, as we all see, shifting a little bit more to the middle, to the left, maybe even. And it was setting up to be more likely a win for Kelly. And as Lorna said, I think that she was so spot on. Man, I feel terrible for Martha McSally to hinge on Trump so hard like she did. And it was just so shameful to see how he treated her in those last 2 weeks. It's shocking that they went that direction after losing their previous election. I was shocked to see that they hinged on Trump, but they did, and that was a downfall.
All right, well, last question in segment 1. Jesse, Democrats were supposed to have won one or both state legislative chambers. They won neither. Were you surprised by that, or did you think something was up?
Oh no, I mean, I was surprised. I think that if this election cycle has taught us anything, and we had to be taught twice, it's that traditional polling is dead, and apparently we don't know what we're talking about when it comes to that. I know all sorts of blame is going around and finger pointing, amongst Democrats themselves, but certainly, I think it was a surprise. And if anything, I think that possibly the Democrats overextended themselves and overshot what was possible. They had a very clear path, I think, to taking the House, and polling suggested both chambers were in play. So rather than focusing on one, we got a little spread thin.
Yep. Bob, what happened?
Well, some of the things that happened that are still shocking to me is seeing that 7 figures being spent in small legislative district races. Even Walt Blackman, LD6, having close to $700,000-800,000 of outside money, mostly from California and places like that, spend, and them to not come up when Thorpe barely won there by 1,000 votes last go round. Shocking display of failure to close the gap there. Will we see that shift over the next 2-4 years, potentially, seeing as how people continue to move into Arizona? But was I shocked that they didn't take one or both? Yeah, I was.
Lorna, surprised they didn't at least get one?
Oh, yeah, 100% surprised. And for somebody who was actively watching this very closely throughout the entire election cycle, and then, as Bob mentioned, the ridiculous amount of money that the Democrats had at their disposal in these small legislative races to take it over and for them to lose, it was an embarrassment. And I mean, and honestly, like, that probably should have gotten much more attention in Arizona. But 2020, Trump is refusing to concede an election, so that's getting all the major headlines. But I mean, that was a big win for Republicans. I think the reason why Democrats lost was they were hinging on the fact that Trump was so unpopular in some of these shifting legislative districts, and that these Republicans or Republican-leaning independents that were either supporting Biden or supporting Mark Kelly, they made the assumption that they're going to vote Democrat down ballot. Republicans are still Republicans, even if they don't support Trump or Martha McSally. And that just, I think we witnessed that this election cycle.
There you have it, folks. They're the best in the business, and you can see why after watching them run through these questions. All right, tomorrow we will look back at the pandemic. We'll see you then, guys.